And we are live. Welcome, 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 welcome to yet another Love Talk with Keisha. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yet another Love Talk with Keisha. As you are coming in, like, tag, and share. Like, tag, and share with someone who may need to hear this encouraging word on managing healing on today. Like, tag, and share. We are happy to be back with another wonderful show, and we are ready to have some engaging conversation. Um, I said managing healing, not managing grief. I meant managing grief. We have our guest, Grief Coach Towhanna Boston, who is going to enlighten us on her journey, her experience, and of grieving. This is going to be an awesome, awesome conversation. So like, tag, and share as you are coming in. All right. All righty. So welcome, welcome, welcome again to yet another Love Talk with Keisha. We are here today to talk about grief. Yes, talk about grief. Grief is one of the things that a lot of people, deal with regarding our family, our friends, our loved ones. But what people don't really realize is that grieving is not just with the personal. There are so many different other things that people grieve, and we're going to start off the show today just by touching on a couple of those things. As I always do, I want to start off the show with just a healing expression. And Tawana, you can think of yours as I begin to state mine. We like to start off the show with just by asking every one on the platform to just um, state an expression, a quote, something that God has put on your heart pertaining to healing, just to encourage the audience. And the one that I have today, I saw this on Facebook. It says, "Heal so that you can hear what's being said without the filter of your wounds." And I thought that that was good. Heal so that you can hear what's being said without the filter of your wounds. And when I read it, began to make me to understand that you begin to interpretate things different once you approach your healing process. But when you're still in the stage of brokenness, you're still in the stage of dealing with so many different emotions and those negative things, you're not able to comprehend as you should, so to be able to move forward. So that is my healing expression on today. Tawana, do you have one?
Mine will be heal so that the perfect plan God has for you can take place. Because when you heal, He's able to use you as He see fit to help heal others.
Absolutely. 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 And we will start off just by what I just stated. People, when we talk about grieving, people always go to immediately loved ones, the person that we lost, the siblings that we lost. But Tawana, can you just give us one or two other ways that people also grieve? One or two other things that people also grieve?
Sure. People grieve the loss of health, whether it's themselves who may be dealing with um, some kind of health issue, cancer, or they may be on a transplant list for lungs or kidneys or heart, or they may grieve the loss of health for a loved one who they may be a caretaker to. Um, so that could be detrimental to anyone because you're trying to function and still manage your responsibilities while you care for someone else who have suffered the loss of their health of some sort. And then you have people who grieve the loss of employment because in their mind they're like, now how am I going to take care of my family? What am I going to do about the bills? When God sees all of that, his plan for us is definitely perfect. But those things people grieve because they're trying to figure out, do they do now?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a good thing that we touched on that. As I said, people always think about loved ones, but people grieve differently and they grieve different things. So that's very important that we start off the conversation with that. We'll move into just explain a little bit too of how me and Tawana met. We met through paparazzi. She was my paparazzi coach. She got me into paparazzi. And when it became the time that I felt that God wanted me to do something differently, I explained to her that I wanted to step out and do something different. And that's where our relationship started. And also having that common area of grieving as well. We have become friends. So on today, we also have a common factor because we both understand how it is to grieve children. Um, it's one of those places where you feel as though you always think that have the um, deepest challenge to carry. But when I found out Tawana's story, I was like, wow, like I lost one child in one day. She lost two in one day. So today we're going to allow her just to share her story and her transition and where she is today along her grieving process. We will start off just a little bit that I would just like to mention about Tawana. She had two children, and she's going to state this a little bit more, but she had two children, the ages of 7 and 8, a girl and a boy, a girl named Octavia and a boy named Christopher Jr. And they died. I hope this is the right date, Tawana. September 11th, 2004. Correct? I
Yeah,
got my
that's
notes
correct.
up. So as we think, 18 years ago, 18 years ago, um, grief coach Tawana lost two kids 18 years ago at the age of 7. And we could just imagine how impactful that must have been for her. And this is just what you're hearing from me. What you're about to hear from her is just going to make you really connect to see how hard it is for someone to lose not just one child, but two. She's going to tell you how it occurred, a little bit more information about if she don't mind that day, just to connect with especially other parents, the female, the men who have lost children or who have lost someone. We're talking about us losing children, but we also want to break this interview down and this conversation down to people who have lost mothers, fathers, husbands, that whole grief thing, to get them to connect with us so that if they are in that place of grieving and they are having a hard time getting up and pushing themselves and trying to find strength or a sense of direction, hopefully on today we can be the help that they need. So I'm going to turn it over to Tawana. I'm going to give her just an introduction moment to introduce herself, tell you a little bit about her story before we actually go into the key topics that we have on today.
Thank you, Lakeisha. And I'm so grateful that the Lord have allowed our paths to cross. I'm Towhanna Boston, and September 11, 2004, our lives changed forever. Octavia, who we called Tavy, and Christopher Jr., who we called CJ. They were 7 and 8 years old, got killed in Washington, D.C. on Florida Avenue in a high speed police chase. Um, I was out running errands, so no, I was not with them. Not sure what state of mind I would have been in if I had seen it unfold, but I was not with them. They was with my ex-husband. Um, and so they were killed. I didn't know it until he picked them up. I left them around 9 a.m. that morning, that Saturday morning, to run errands. They dad picked them up. By noon, they was dead. I didn't find out till about 2. So once I got picked up to go to the hospital, in my mind, I'm still thinking, okay, something happened. The doctor just want them for observations, but I didn't see them. So I asked their dad, where's Tavy and CJ? And he said, oh, come in this room and the doctor will explain everything to you. Well, when I went in this room, they explained to me that it was a accident, and Tavy CJ got hit crossing the street in the crosswalk with this guy fleeing the police, and he hit them head on. And my ex-husband said they're no longer here, and I'm like, "What do you mean they no longer here?" He said they died, and I screamed like to the top of my lungs. My body was in shock. I just couldn't believe it. And all I kept saying is, I want to see my kids. I want to see my kids. But once I was taken into the room to see them, my daughter looked like she was asleep and at peace. But my son had a frightened look on his face. So he must have saw the car coming. But at that moment, I just began to give God praise. And to some, that might sound crazy, but to me, I was giving God praise, not because He decided that day to take them, but because He knew what lies ahead. So He knew their future. But it was difficult, I to say the least, that was challenging. That was a hard pill to swallow. Because I wasn't finished raising them. My whole life shift from doing groceries. I ain't had to spend $400 on food. Groceries went down. I was doing laundry every week. That went down to doing laundry once a month. I mean, everything just changed, and I was so lost. As many of us sometimes, when our life shifts, we're so lost and trying to figure out what's next. What do we do now? I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. So it was difficult, but I'm grateful for the foundation in Christ. And I'm grateful because today I'm still in my right mind. I still know
Hmm.
I am Tawana. And I give God glory for keeping me all these years and not having them. But when we go through loss, sometimes we go through so many trials all at one time. And Lakeisha, if I could real quick read Job, the first chapter, 8 uh through 12 real quick, because this helped me get through not having Tavy and CJ, because our loss, and as we journey through grief, it's really about God's plan for your life. And you can't even say, or you might have family members or friends or somebody come to you and say, well, if I was you, I would do this. Well, if I was you, I wouldn't do this, that, or the other. But it's about God's plan for you. So this is Job, the first chapter, and the 8th verse says, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job? Put your name there, though. Have thou considered my servant Lakeisha? Have thou considered my servant whoever? Put your name there, because the Lord is asking the enemy, have he considered you attacking you with these different trials. So that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that heareth God and eschews evil. So Job stayed away from evil. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, uh, I gotta take my glasses off, so I'm sorry, guys. Doeth Job fear God for naught? Has not thou made an hedge about him and about his house and all that he hath on every side? Has thou blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land? But put forth thine hand now and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And see, the enemy was saying, Job, all that you have done for him, you blessed his hands, you blessed his family. That's the only reason why he's serving you. You don't think he having that conversation about you? The only reason why they living for you, Lord, is because you're protecting them, you're covering for them, you're providing for them. But God allowed the enemy to touch everything but Job's soul. He lost his kids, he got sick in his health, and even his friends was like, you must have really made God mad for him to bring all this on to you. And I say that because September 11, 2004, we lost Tavy and CJ. December 2004, my divorce was final. So that's another loss. My marriage ended. And then in 2005, I got robbed at Suitland Metro. So, mind you, it was trial after trial after trial. And I was like, Lord, what in the world is going on? And we do get to that point where we say, I can't take this no more. Like, I can't take another thing, but you can. And what the Lord was telling me and showing me, I cannot encourage people to hold on if I give up. So yes, I had the death of the kids, I had my divorce, and then I got robbed at Suitland Metro, but I didn't lose my life. He still covered me. But I can't encourage others to hold on and to hang in there and that they will get through this if I give up. So we go through this journey that we call grief, and sometimes the natural side to us feel like, I'm not going to survive this, but you will. You definitely will. It's been 18 years since we been without Tavy and CJ. They will be in their 20s now. And it's been about 4 years since I haven't been to the grave, because I used to go to the grave on September 11, put flowers in their vases, and then I used to go to the grave on their birthdays, because their birthdays are October 1st and October 22nd. So right after they got killed, they had birthdays. But it was trauma. It was tough. I wouldn't dare say that that was a easy trial to get through, because it wasn't. And it took God. It took me crying out to him, because people could hug you all day long, but they can't move that hurt. They can't move that pain. Nobody could do that but God, you know. And I asked him now, how can I reach those who don't know him? You got people every day losing their loved ones to COVID, losing their children to drive-bys. You know how many shootings took place in DC last year? That is crazy. And I'm talking about young kids. You know, parents not even getting to see their child get into middle school because they done got shot by somebody else shooting at somebody else. It's crazy, but none of us don't know when these particular tests and trials will take place in our life. Your life can shift at a blink of an eye. You can lose someone close to you, like today. We used to say, here today, gone tomorrow. No, here today, gone today, because you could lose your life so quick. We all know when we was born. We all know how we was born, but none of us don't know when we leaving, and none of us don't know how we leaving. The important thing is to have your heart right with God, and your trials, your journey through grief will definitely help you find your purpose in Him so that He can use you to help others.
Amen. Amen. And that scripture again, Tawana, was Job, the first chapter, verse 8 through 11.
Yes, verse 8 through 11.
Verse 11. So for someone that may be grieving, someone that may be, dealing with grief, and and you're not stuck, but you're just finding a difficulty, as Tawana said, that scripture helped her along the way. So we just ask you to just write that down. Job, the first chapter, verses 8 through 11. And I was just writing the dates down, Tawana, as you was talking, and I was just like, wow, because I didn't know the rest of the stuff that you was talking about. I just knew that your kids had passed away on September 11, 2004, but we didn't even get to talk about a divorce that took place months later, and then getting robbed, months later. I'm just imagining, as you said, things just keep happening, and you want to still try to find that sense of push in the midst of everything. And then not only that, as you said, they passed away September 11th, but then they had birthdays in October. So even though you were managing from one point, trying to hold on to one point, I'm sure that it was hard even when you approach the birthdays, because I realized that, when Keyshawn birthday come around and the holidays and stuff like that, it's an emotional struggle. So I applaud you, because like I said in the beginning, I lost one child, but you lost two, so that's double the struggle for me. So that she has basically opened up and told us a little bit about her. We're going to go into some key points, and the first key point that we want to talk about, and she has already kind of discussed this in the little bit that she said, but we just want to to hear, Tawana, how you were able to connect the natural effects of grief. How were you able to connect that with finding spiritual strength? Like, these are my kids, they're gone. I'm never going to get them back. It's affecting me. I'm grieving every day, but I still believe God for who He is. I still believe God for um, just my mindset. I trust Him for my strength. I trust Him to get me through the situation. How were you able to connect the two? What had happened, but then the whole spiritual aspect of that being your push?
So, um, naturally, I couldn't wrap my head around it at first. But in a natural sense, when once I gained knowledge that they had passed, in a natural sense, as a mom, had I known that was going to happen, I would have tried to somehow protect them. Or I would have been like, to my ex-husband, yeah, Chris, come get them another day. You can't have them today. But not knowing that that was going to be my last time seeing them, you know, I would encourage parents to definitely hug your kids, hug them, kiss them. And I always hugged and kissed on my kids, except that day. That particular day, I left out to run errands and did not give them a hug and did not give them a kiss. We was talking about the food that they was going to eat at my ex-husband's company picnic. And so after they passed, I was hard on myself because I was like, man, I always gave them a kiss. I always prayed over them as well. Um, and that particular day, I did none of that. So hug your kids, give them a good night kiss. constantly tell them that you love them, and not just your kids, your loved ones, because 5 years ago we lost my mom. And so she's not here for me to tell her that I love her. So just tell your family members that you love them. Give them a hug. Um, and trying to look at that as the natural sense. I did not see the spiritual side of some of that because God don't reveal everything to you right away. His plan for you in the passing of your loved one, whether it was your child, your spouse, your sibling, whoever it may have been, he don't show you the whole picture just yet because he has to emotionally and spiritually and mentally prepare you for what he's getting ready to do in your life. So, with Tavy and CJ being gone at their funeral services, when they teachers got up to speak about them, I really did not know that they were the way they were in school because when parents are not around, you don't know what your kid's gonna do. I never said, "Oh, my child wouldn't do that. My child wouldn't do that," because I don't know what they do when mommy not around. But listening to their teachers and their principals, I was like, okay. CJ would take kids to the nurse if they got hurt for recess. And one of their teachers was like, you could tell that they was being raised in church because their actions showed it. Now they was only 7 or 8 years old. And I believe, God deal with our children as well because they also got baptized within 6 months of each other. I kept telling them to wait because I'm like, salvation is serious. And I'm like, y'all need to, wait till you fully understand what salvation is. But they got baptized within 6 months of each other. And I guess they got tired of me telling them to wait. And so when the lady came to get me, the baptism committee, after they went up there for prayer and they went over some scriptures with them about salvation and asked them questions, and I said, oh, they understand. I said, well, I'm not interfering with that because I don't know what God is trying to do. So that spirit, that all of that was in that spiritual aspect of them passing away. And so I didn't realize that as young as they were, and some may not believe it, but I believe as young as they were, they had already fulfilled what God placed them on this earth to do. Why? Because in school, that's where it showed. And one day, Tavy said they ate lunch and her stomach was hurting. And she said, Mommy, I just prayed and asked God to touch my stomach and the pain went away. And I was grateful because why? We as parents are not going to always be around them. So the spiritual side to their little lives was huge as I began to grieve them and thinking of not having them and buying their favorite snacks like Pop Tarts and bagel bites and stuff like that. And the first time I went grocery shopping, I literally had to get out of the store because I didn't need to buy any of their favorites. So the natural side of me would have tried to protect them from any kind of danger. But the spiritual side is that they had already fulfilled what they were born to do. When I had them in 1995 and 1996, because they was 11 months apart, God already knew at age 7 and 8 he was going to take them. I didn't know that, but he knew that. So, and and it was huge that their principal and their teachers was able to see that spiritual foundation in them and in how they handled other children and being helpful to other children. So I'm grateful for the Lord using them then, and even in their funeral service there was people that went down and got baptized. So all of that is in that spiritual realm. So when we go through our grief journey, when we go through the passing of our loved ones, it is a blessing when we're able to connect and see that God has a bigger picture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Because just the thought of, grief, losing someone, whether it's a child, sibling, spouse, mom, dad, it gets you to you begin to feel hopeless. I know I did in the beginning. It was hopeless where you begin to feel like you can't do this because you've lost this person. I was having a conversation with someone today, and we was talking about the greatest loss that you could ever probably endure as a child or a parent. For some, it's probably a spouse, but for me, I'm just thinking of a child or a parent. It's probably one of the greatest loss. And when you think about that, you actually begin to feel hopeless. And through my journey of grief, what has kept me, as everyone see, what has kept me is to always try to celebrate his life. Birthdays. It was balloon release until they just recently took that away. But if nothing else but a simple prayer at a park or going out to eat, those types of things will help you along your grieving instead of feeling that life is hopeless. You can find ways to celebrate their life because that's what I would think your family would want you to do. Celebrate your life. With having a conversation with someone today, she was talking about kids, but she began to state how our kids are actually lent to us. They are never ours fully. Our kids are lent to us. God lends our kids to us. And that began to think me back when I was going through the beginning of my grief process. Somebody began to say that to me. And I want to say that that was one of the thoughts that I repeatedly said to myself back then to help me along my grieving process, to know that, he was lent to me, he was lent for me to love, lent for me to engage, you know, lent to me to create these memories and all of those wonderful things. So that sometimes can help too when you begin to process, you know, um, those different concepts of how we're going to perceive or how we're going to begin to how we're going to begin to grasp on to a sense of hope. Because it is hard. It's very hard. Grief can land you in a hard spot. You can go ahead, Tawana.
Oh, I was agreeing with you because when we would go to the grave site, that's what we would do. On the 10th anniversary, we released blue and pink balloons. But we would do that too. We would pray at the grave site and then we would go out to eat. And you're right, I would encourage people that when you suffer the loss of your loved ones, um, celebrate their life, remember the things that made you laugh about them and everything. With CJ, he didn't say collard greens, he said holla greens. We look and we was like that, they taste so good they make you want to holler, CJ. But celebrate their life and
And
laugh as
it's
much as you
true.
can because that
Yeah.
helps you to heal as well. And you mentioned another thing, Keisha. They with people saying, losing children are like the hardest. It's actually a pain you can't even describe. Um, and parents and siblings. I Loss is just hard and very difficult and can send your whole body through shock. It's definitely hard, but as much as you can, celebrate them, celebrate their life.
Absolutely. And we can. transition just a little bit. I know most of the time we're talking about kids because that's our common areas, but just to transition it a whole nother way. If I was to share that my grieving process started, let me see, my oldest son was born May of 97. I lost my grandfather a month after having my first son. That was the first person I lost, my grandfather. And then I ended up losing my father. I believe it was that same year, maybe like November, I believe it was. So I have my grandfather that raised me. This is the man that raised me, until the age of 13, 14, until I transitioned with my mom. Then my dad, who was incarcerated, we had begun to build a relationship through calls and letters. And actually, when he got out, my father was out of jail for 3 months before he committed suicide. He got out, but he just could not adapt to the world because he had been incarcerated for so long. And my dad, it hurt. Again, sometimes it's the way that people die that hurts you. And to know that my father committed suicide by going to work and hanging himself on a tree in the back of the field, that was heavy for me. Because prior to his death, I began to connect with him through the process of losing my grandfather. He came to in the country. They do like this big cookout before the homegoing service and all of that stuff. And my father was there to share that moment with me. And through the days of me being in the country, we saw each other. We're making plans. We're making plans for Thanksgiving. We're making plans for Christmas and all of those things. And I'm looking forward to it. And here it is. I never get to share that with my dad. And then that was 97. And then we talk about 2009. I now lose a husband, someone I had known for 11 years that had helped me through my battles that I was going through back in 97 to come out of it in 2004. Friends for 11 years, lived together for 4. Bam, we get married, and I'm only a newlywed for 7 months. So there I am, 3 times I'm grieving. And that was hard because it was at the point where you have a military man. And here's the thing people don't understand. It doesn't matter how strong you are, who you are. Grief can hit anybody and it can take anybody out. He was a military man, strong man, military man, everything. Took me in with nothing, took care of me and my kids with nothing, not a penny. Took care of us until I got back on my feet and was able to branch out for myself. But depression hit him hard because he lost his grandmother and his mother in almost a 6-month span. 2 most adorable women in his life he lost. And because of that, he hit depression. And he treated that depression with alcohol. And that alcohol was liquor. That liquor was straight liquor. That liquor was, I forgot what the name was. It was straight liquor. You talking about what in the house finding bottles hidden in closets, bottles hidden in the couch, and tall bottles, just drinking them, drinking them, drinking them. It was hard for me. And then you talk about, so I got my grandfather, I got my dad, I got my husband. And now 2015, it get me again. I got my son. The worst it could ever get, my son. So the grief is hard, but you have to find a sense of hope, as me and Towhanna has been saying, to find something to inspire you to hold on a little bit and not sink in it. Because when you begin to sink, to sit back and see my husband, I was talking about this today with someone, to sit back and see my husband sink in depression with his mother and his grandmother, and I could do nothing about it. I couldn't do nothing. You talking about he was going to a job but couldn't function because he lost the job, because now he's sitting in the doorway of the job drunk because he can't even function. You're talking about a military man that was strong and everything else, but got so heavily depressed to the point where his liver was completely gone. And he couldn't get a liver transplant because he couldn't sustain from alcohol. So his last 60 days, was in a hospital. Grief can get you to that point if you don't have anything to really hold on to. And that's why you have to try to hold on to the memories. You have to try to hold on to like the things that Towhanna said, what her son said, and the joke she made from it. You know, celebrating the birthdays, celebrating the holidays, doing something. You know, for a while, I had pictures all over my house when Keyshawn passed away. And people are like, well, take your pictures down. No, never tell nobody what to do along a grieving process. That's their process. That's what they need to make it through.
Absolutely.
And I wrote down these things. And I talked about my husband, but I also wrote down while you were talking, a lot of people, you know, when Keyshawn passed away, his team, I'm telling you, his football team was such an inspiration to me. It was exactly what I needed. But people did not understand that even a day or two, it was less than a week, how I could stand on a football field with his team and smile. They didn't understand what she's smiling for. She just lost her son. Sometimes you may not understand the mindset of that person. You know, I had my talks with God already before I went to the football field about what I felt, how I felt. I had that conversation already. And I had already claimed that even in this, I wasn't going to let it, you know, try my best to not allow it to, you know, take me out. Because at the end of the day, I had to realize I still had a son to live. I still had a son, you know, and it got to the point even to Warner where, you know, a lot of times we feel that we're trying to hide our pain. So maybe I was trying to hide my pain from my oldest son, where it got to the point where my oldest son went to somebody and said, "What's wrong with my mother?" You know, she act like she don't miss my brother. You know, she act like it doesn't hurt her because yes, I was smiling when he saw me on the football field and in the, you know, doing all of this, but in my room I was crying. I was crying. I wasn't crying in his presence. So he felt that I wasn't affected by his brother's, you know, passing. And sometimes we have to let, you know, it's nothing wrong with crying. It's nothing wrong with releasing. And
Absolutely.
when I found that out through my loved one, I immediately called them in the car. Remember, like yesterday, I called them and I sat right in that car and I explained to him, "Mommy's hurting, but mommy was trying to hold up from you. I was trying to hold up for you." And it was that moment sitting in the car with my son that we let it all out. I cried. We leaned over. I'm leaning over from the driver's seat. He's leaning over from the passenger seat. And we let tears out. We cried. We hugged and everything. And it was the start of that day that I knew that me holding my pain back was affecting my son because he felt that mommy wasn't hurting. And that's when I began to release, and that brought us closer. So I say to somebody, I say all of that to say to somebody, like, it's not it's okay to cry. It's okay to let them out. You may want to take that time to be by yourself, but it's okay to cry in front of your loved ones to let them know that you struggle from time to time. I just ask people just to watch what you say because sometimes you can mean the best, but what you say at that moment may not be able to process with that person that is grieving. Stephanie said, "Yes, you did. You are a strong woman." She says, "Missing him." She says, "And we went to the championship." And thank you for mentioning that, Stephanie, because what people don't understand is that the reason that I could go on that field and smile is because, for one, before my son's death, my household was, like you were saying, Tawana, just certain things just stand out. Before he passed away, my household, months before he passed out, we were going through so many things in our household, so many different things. I was calling the police because he wouldn't go to school. I gave him to my sister because he just wouldn't listen to me. He went to my sister, he stayed, and he came back a different child. He was going to football field, he was going to the football field, had the best coaches, everything. He had got back on track. My son had begun to tell me he loved me again. "Bye, mommy. I love you. See you when I come home." I hadn't got that for months. For months. Could I had imagined if I lost my son and my household was still where it was before? Do you realize what I would have felt had I lost my son and I didn't get no I love yous?
Yeah.
No, I see you when I come home. No, seeing him going on a football field and managing. You don't know what people are holding on to, even when they're smiling through what they're going through. You don't know. And as Towhanna said, they went to the championship. His last game allowed his team to proceed. Come on now, I got a reason to smile, more than a reason to smile. And I still hold on to this day. Every time my family speak, we say, yeah, they went to the championship. You know, hold on to those memories, hold on to those thoughts, and use those things to help you keep going. Use those things to help you push, because you have to. You can't let sorrow take you out. You can't let depression take you out. You can't let the mental breakdown take you out. You have to push. And Tawana, I'll give you a moment just to add on to everything that I've said.
Yes, and you know what, Lakeisha, listening to you talk about you having what you had before he passed, with him saying I love you, I see you when I get home, mommy. You know, he was a different child when he came back from your sisters. I'm gonna tell you, I give God all the glory for you, but I give him all the glory because he's the only one that can repair relationships. Because we lost my mom 5 years ago, but me and her relationship was rocky. It was rocky, but it got better after my kids died. And I would say, sometimes that it takes death to help sometimes your loved ones to get they act together, or for you to repair relationships with your other loved ones. That's why we can encourage people today, while you have breath in your body, fix it. Fix your relationship with your loved ones, because you don't know when you leaving here and you don't know when they're leaving here. But my mom changed after the death of my kids, and the Lord allowed me and her relationship to be, it was exciting. It was funny. And even when I started taking psychology classes and going into grief and loss, I would share things with her and just make her laugh. But my grieving process with her was a little bit different with the kids. I was more at peace with the kids, but with my mom, I still, even though God is a repairer of relationship and he allowed us to have that connection again, I still was dealing with the woulda, shoulda, couldas. So if we fix things now while we have breath in our body, if we repair relationships now while we can, if we forgive now while we can, you will not have to deal with the woulda, shoulda, couldas. But I am so grateful to what God has done in you and your son relationship before he passed. Because if those relationships are not fixed when someone do pass, it does make the grief that much harder. You're dealing with guilt and grief. And them two combined, they don't go. You talking about being a hot mess, you will be tore up from the flow up. You don't want to have to deal with grief and guilt at the same time. So if you got a chance to fix a relationship, fix it. Whether it be with your kids, your spouse, your parents, your siblings, fix it. Because none of us don't know when that day and time is coming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you said is right on point, because my son's death brought my family closer. Like, we did things, yes, but it brought us closer. And it just it put a different meaning on family. It put a different meaning on family. So it's so true. I have a thing now where, as you said earlier, you look, the saying used to be here today, gone tomorrow, but here today, gone today. And because of that, I try not to go to bed angry. I try to forgive as much as possible. Like, I do, because I would hate to lose a loved one and never get a chance to say I'm sorry. And as you said, have to deal with, man, I should have said it last night. That's the worst feeling. That's ever, like, worst thought you could ever you could ever have to deal with. So yes, that's so true. The next point I want to talk about, Tawana, and this is good. I love this. This is therapy for me. Uh, um, I want to talk about the gathering of your mindset. For those that did not come in at the beginning, they're tuning in now. Tawana is a grief and loss coach, and she lost her two young children, a girl and a boy, ages 7 and 8, due to a high-speed police chase in D.C. In on September 11th of 2004. So part of her grieving process that she is opening up and talking about today. So with saying that, Tawana, what was the gathering of your mindset? You spoke a little earlier about, no longer having to, spend as much money on groceries, didn't have to wash as often. I'm sure at some point in time you had to go through their belongings. Um, what was what was the gathering of your mindset? Can you share with that as all of those things begin to happen?
So if y'all remember, we talked about how the Lord asked Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" When we go through the loss of our loved ones, um, in my mind with Tavy and CJ, it was difficult. It was very complicated because I felt lost. I didn't know what I was going to do not having them. But at the same time, I was determined though not to become unstable. I was determined, and when you go through tough times, the enemy, we all know he come to steal, kill, and destroy. So if he could use the death of that loved one to destroy you, that's exactly what he will do. If he could use the death of that loved one to destroy your purpose in Christ, that's exactly what he will do. So God has given us his word when it comes to our mind. I love that scripture, Philippians 4 and 6. I believe that it says, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things of a good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, to think on these things. And as you journey through your grief process, as you journey through that hurt, as you journey through trying to think and process, where do I go from here? You got to think on everything that is true. You got to think on everything that is honest. You got to think on everything that is pure. And you can't listen to people. You got to make your ear sensitive to the voice of God, because people will say, "Oh, if I was you, I would do this." They may or may not have lost a child. They may or may not have lost a parent. But you can't listen to people. You got to hear from God. Your mind is important. It's important that you don't lose yourself in that loss, because it's possible. You can lose yourself, and you could get so wrapped up in sadness that you don't want to be bothered with anybody. Now, for a while, I took a break from answering phone calls and things of that nature, and I would let them leave a voicemail. And later on, when I had the energy and the strength, I would give them a call back. But some people don't know what to say. They don't know what to say when you are going through your journey with grief, and sometimes what they say is not helpful to you. So I try to stay away from negative thoughts. I try to stay away from negative people. Even if I had to take a break from family for a minute until God gave me the strength and the energy and the wisdom to handle their action towards losing Tavy and CJ. um because again, it's your journey, it's not theirs. They may have been their uncle, they may have been their sister, they may have been their grandparents or whatever, but that grief and loss journey is yours. That's that's my journey, So I didn't want to become unstable mentally and not having them. So that made me stay away from negative thoughts, negative people, and just try to focus on what good can come out of their death. And I started getting phone calls to help some DC moms who lost kids in drive-bys. But at first I was like, okay, Lord, I'm not finished. I'm not finished grieving. Like, I'm not finished going through my process. How do you want me to help somebody else? So you have to ask yourself, um, am I going to allow the death of my kids or the death of my spouse or mom or whoever it is that you lost that was truly close to you? In my case, I had to ask myself, in the death of Tavy and CJ, am I going to allow this to take me completely out, completely down, completely out of this world? Or am I going to reach out and ask God to help me and to give me the strength to allow Him to use me for His glory, for His purpose? What plan did He have for me not being able to finish raising my kids? Like, in my mind, I'm like, who does that? Like, what are you doing, Lord? But my brother, my youngest brother, said something to me, and he said, T, he said, God know exactly what He doing. He said, because He can't go around taking everybody kids because people will be losing their minds. He said, so He know exactly who can handle what. And as time went on, I began to believe that He does know who can handle what. So this is your journey through the process of losing your loved one. So you have to make up in your mind whether you going to let it destroy you or whether you going to let God's purpose and His plan uh take place in your life. And once that pain is turned to purpose, then it becomes your passion.
Wow. And that was so great. As you was talking, I wrote down destroy or defeat. Like, destroy or defeat. Are you going to let this thing destroy you? Or are you going to give every might that you can so that you possibly defeat this thing and it don't take you out? And I began to just think about, I was talking about this today too. I had an awesome conversation today. But I was talking in the conversation and I was just saying that where I am today, I know that for a fact, had I not for one got to the point where I realized I needed help, and not that I needed help, I needed therapy, I needed counseling, I needed somebody to help me mentally get that thing together. But then not only did I have to realize not only did I have to realize the help that I was going to get to help me mentally stay balanced, but I had to realize that God was the only one who could fully help me recover. See, the therapist and the counsel, they're good, you know, but that was a temporary fix for me because I had already declared I wasn't going to be in therapy for the rest of my life. And I had already decided that I was going to do my best as possible to stay away from medication because you're talking about PTSD, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and all of those things. So, and here's how God worked. Even with that, I even went to the doctor to get medication because I got to the point where I felt that it was really hard for me. And my neighbor, where this situation happened, she said, Keisha, come and go to revival with me. And Towhanna, when I tell you I went to revival with her, I had the pills that I had got that day right in my purse and was going to take them when I went home. And the pastor that was at her church, I'm telling you, I don't remember what the sermon was, But it was the sermon for me, because that sermon, I tell you, when I went home, I flushed every pill. You talking about at least 2 to 3 bottles. I flushed every pill down the toilet. And that's when determination set in. So I say all of that to say that even the prayer that I had declared, that I kept praying, and I said this today in the conversation that I had, it was me saying, kneeling down at my bed, serious as ever, with tears rolling down my face, saying, God, if you get me through this, through the death and the loss of my son, because remember, I was feeling guilty because I made the choice to invite this man into my house, and I lost my son because I did it. So I was not dealing with grief of losing my son. I had shame. I had guilt. I was depressed. Couldn't keep myself together. Thinking I needed medication. But I began to kneel down at my bed and say, God, if you get me through this, I will spend the rest of my life telling people that you did it and how good you are, and showing them that you can also help them. And I say today in my conversation, it's because of that prayer that I know that I've made it yet almost 7 years into this grieving process. It's because of me kneeling down at the side of my bed and saying, God, I have absolutely no control over this. This is not a bill I can pay. This is not a cough I can get over. This is not a job that I could just switch to another one. This is the loss and the death of my son that I feel is my fault because I made a decision that caused his death. God, it's too much. I can't do it. I need your help. And it was because of that prayer that has allowed me to get to the point to say, man, God is able. He's possible. Like God did all of this. Had I not went to the therapist, had I not decided to continue to pray on the side of my bed and cry and pour out to God, Love Talk with Keisha, life coach, creative love designs, self-love ministry, the mindset that I have, the wisdom that I have, the spiritual foundation that I have would not be possible because I would have mentally been disturbed. I would have mentally, emotionally, physically, everything been broken. So it's important that at some point in time that we try to find a sense of direction so that the sorrow don't keep us down, so that the grief don't keep us stuck, that we can move forward. And as you said, we have to make a choice. Are we going to allow this thing to destroy us? Or are we going to try to defeat this thing with the help of God? So you definitely spoke on that 100%. So I applaud you for that.
I
The
just
next
wanted to add one thing, Keisha, real quick, to anyone who may feel like they need to go seek counseling or seek a therapist. Do not feel bad about that. Do what you got to do for your mental health. Even if you are saved and filled with the Holy Ghost, there's nothing wrong with you seeking counseling because you need someone to talk through that grief journey. Everybody journey is different. Everybody journey is different. Everybody don't grieve the same. And some people already dealing with a level of depression, with a level of sadness, with a level of anxiety before the death even take place. So when that death occur, it adds on to that. Don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer in silence. Don't let the enemy toy with your mind and cause you to suffer in silence. Please, please, if you need help, get help.
Absolutely. And as you was talking about therapy, I remember being at one point in time, I ain't going to therapy. I ain't. But I did it. And here's what the therapist told me because I opened up. Two things I want to mention. The therapist said a lot of people have therapy mixed up. You think that the therapist wants you to come there and they tell you what to do. No, the therapist wants you to at least have an idea, an outlook for yourself. So they can just say, okay, add this, subtract this, maneuver through this. They don't want to plan it for you. They want to help you find your way through it. And when I begin to understand that, it began to challenge me to do some inner work myself. Then the second thing I wanted to say is that even though I was going through therapy for my son, it went deep down into me to even allow me to do some self-reflection of my past relationships, why I got with this man and how this man stood out, the connection with my grandfather and my father, because I felt abandoned, because I felt neglected, because I felt, and I'm like, what? Like I literally been getting with these men because of what I felt from my father and my grandfather and my husband. Like it opened up a whole nother window. So like Tawana said, therapy is not bad. It's about your whole mindset and your vision for yourself. If you are going to commit yourself that I'm going to use this thing to pull me up, I'm going to use this thing to help me grow, I'm going to use this thing to transition, it'll work. But if you allow other people to tell you what's good for you, what's not for you, it's not going to work. So it's all about your mindset. All about your mindset. Tawana, the next question I wanted to ask, you stated this in the beginning of the live. You stated that when your husband, ex-husband, had mentioned to you that your kids were basically what had happened. His words was, "They are no longer here. They died." Like, how did that transition with you?
Yeah, when he said they no longer here, my question to him was, "What do you mean? What do you mean they no longer here?" And that's when he said they died, and I I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And that's when I screamed, and that's when I kept saying, "I want to see them. I want to see them," because at that point, I wanted to see for myself were they still breathing. So apparently, CJ, uh, the impact of them being thrown so far up in the air and landing on the street, uh, the car literally knocked them out of their shoes, and he had a collapsed lung and a broken neck. So, but they still didn't pronounce him dead until he got to the hospital. Tavy had one collapsed lung and many broken bones. These were the reports that I was reading later. But when I went in the room to see them, her lips had just started turning blue. They had worked on her to really try to revive her, but it wasn't God's will. And because they was 11 months apart and they were so close, in my mind, I was like, well, the Lord really couldn't took one of them without taking the other, because I started thinking, how would the other one survive without the other one? Because they were so close. They was 11 months apart. That was like having twins. But uh, I just was in shock, Lakeisha. I just could not believe that my kids was gone. And when I went in the room and I looked at them, I mean, I cried, not just then, but even after giving God glory and giving him praise. I had many days and many nights that I did nothing but cry, nothing but cry. Because I really could not believe that they were gone. I really could not believe that they were no longer here. I really could not believe that I was not finished raising them. And the conversation I had with my daughter, that Octavia was always asking questions about heaven. And she said to me that summer, so they died in September. We was going into the fall. School had just started in Prince George's County. But during the summer months, she said, "Mom, I do not want you to die." And I said, "Well, Tavy, God is in control of everything. I prayed and asked him to allow me to raise y'all till y'all get 18 because I didn't want nobody else raising y'all. But it's all in God's hands. We are all in God's hands. But it's almost like she got her wish though, because she died before me. She didn't want me to go, but she died before me. And just having those conversations with her was leading up to the Lord taking them when He took them. And so, even in that, with our conversation with our kids, with our family members, pay attention to certain things because those things are key for later on. So, it was tough to understand what had taken place, Lakeisha, with their death. I really could not believe that they were no longer here. They was not coming back. And if I could bring them back, they would be here for sure. But
Yeah.
um I just couldn't
I
believe it.
Yeah, I imagine Turning Points Church Pastor K, she says change your thinking will change your life. And that's so true. And that's why I brought it up. When you begin to change your thinking, it will change your life. Like if you are mentally broken, you better change that mindset. If you are mentally broken, you better transition some thoughts or do something because your mindset and the way that you think has a lot to do with where you go, where you are, what you're going to succeed, how you're going to elevate, what you're going to transition into. Like your mindset, man, I'm telling you,
You have
mindset, your
to,
mindset,
because
man.
if you don't think you coming out of it, you not gonna come out of it. If you don't think you gonna be healed from the loss of your loved one, you are not going to be healed. You got to change your mind. And that scripture that I gave, Philippians 4 and 6, thinking on those things that's true, that's honest, that's pearl, that's where all that comes from. Your mind, you got to see it as though it is. I am healed. I thank God that He took that pain away, Lakeisha. My heart don't feel like I'm getting ready to have a heart attack. I thank God for helping me to see that if I keep my mind on Him, I can maintain my peace. I can keep my joy. Am I happy that the kids are gone? Absolutely not. But I give God glory for His plan and His purpose being perfect.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things it took me a long time to understand, people used to say it a lot, but I just wasn't there yet. In so many words, you lose someone. I lose my son, and people would say things. They would speak of purpose, but at the time in the beginning, I ain't see no purpose. Like I don't see purpose from me losing my son. Like you were saying earlier, sometimes people you just can't transition certain things. In the beginning, I ain't seen what purpose is in I lose my 14-year-old son in the manner in which I lose him. What purpose is in that? But now, years later, I know that, and this is what has helped me to find comfort in the loss of my son, is because I not only did I promise God that I wasn't going to give up, but I promised my son I wasn't going to give up. I and I had to promise Keyshawn I wasn't going to give up, but I also had to realize that I still had another son to live for. That if I gave up on the loss of my son, what I was setting my physical son up for, that was still here for me. What would he do to see mommy fall down and lose herself? How would that impact him? So even in the back of my head, even though it was hard, yes, it was hard. It was very challenging. But at the end of the day, you have to have something to hold on to. And at that moment, even though I had lost my 14-year-old son, I had to still hold on for my other son because I didn't want him to lose himself, because his anger had escalated, spaz out in a minute. And I was constantly praying, God, don't let that anger explode, that he take it to the streets and the streets is crazy and something end up happening to him. because many times I prayed. So even I know that for a fact that now I can see purpose, because I realized that if it was not through the loss of my son, I always wanted to write and to speak, but it was the death of my son that pushed me into purpose that I can see now, that allowed me to write two books, that brought up that craving to become a coach and help other people, and to sit in my bedroom at the time and make a cardboard sign and put on my wall when I didn't have the trademark yet for many years, and I put self love ministry, because God said self love ministry. That's who you are. That's what you need to be doing. That's what you need to call it. For years, cardboard sign behind me. I'm sitting on my bed or by my windowsill, and I'm speaking. That was self therapy for me. That was determination for me. That was motivation for me. That was drive for me. That was hope for me. And some of the things that we need when we are pushing through. But now I can understand purpose. I can understand that, yeah, okay, I lost my son, but purpose built this. My push built this. The strength that God gave me formed this. And because of that, I'm grateful. And then moving on to our last point, Tawana, we talked about this in the interview. I asked the question, when did hope begin to set in for you? And you said to me three words. You said pray, you said praise, and you said press. Can you explain those three and why that was your response?
Yes, Keisha, because for some people, hope come early on in the passing of their loved ones. They might hope at some point God will reverse the death and raise them like Jesus raised Lazarus. Uh, or, you know, if they sick with some disease, they in their hope in the beginning is God to heal them from the disease, and God decide to take them on. So for some, hope come early on, and then for some, hope come later on. And for me, hope was much later on, in the process of not having Tavy and CJ here no more, in the hopes now that my test has become a testimony, can help others through their journey. Now, there are a lot of grief coaches out there, a lot of grief therapists out there, a lot of grief counselors out there, but God has specific people for each one of those to reach. Even in your field, it's a lot of self-love coaches, a lot of, self-love ministries, but you're going to be able to reach people that they may not be able to reach. He has someone, like with all the pastors and ministers and churches that we have in our area, it's only some of them that will able to reach those that's all tatted up, that's all pierced up, so with losing Tavy and CJ, the Lord began to allow me to help others, but He will bring them to me. I would never have to go out looking for people that the Lord may want me to assist in their journey. He will bring them to me. And when He will bring them to me, then I'm praying what it is, Lord, that you want me to encourage them with, that will allow them to hold on to the Lord. So it caused me to pray. And as I was praying, I praised him. I gave him thanks for taking this vessel to want to use me in that manner. Now, would I have chosen to help someone in grief and loss? Absolutely not. Because to me personally, if I could be transparent, it's too depressing. Like it's sad. Like it opens your situation back up. Even though I don't stay there long because I know the joy of the Lord is my strength. So that's where my strength is coming from. So even though I don't stay sad long, helping somebody else and just, giving your all to them and their story that they're going through as they go through the process. It said I would have never selected that. I think a lot of us would select what we are currently uh being used by the Lord in, but he's amazing. So I continue to give him glory. I continue to give him praise for choosing me because he didn't have to choose me. And then I keep pushing. You have to keep pushing. Like you can't give up. You can't stop. Even as different trials come. Because when they died, and then my divorce took place, and then I got robbed, and I forgot to tell y'all. And then after I got robbed, a couple months later, I got a car accident. So when stuff begin to happen, you got to keep pushing because you can't help somebody else to stand if you give up. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep pressing on, you know. And when you can't pray for yourself, or if you don't have the energy and the strength to take one more step, trust and believe God got somebody lifting you up. He always have somebody calling out your name. You don't even know that that person is praying for you, that that person is crying out to the Lord on your behalf. And then before you know it, you get strength from nowhere. And you be like, Lord, you are just so good. You are just so mighty. You are just so awesome. And you know it's not nobody but God. You know, people look at you, Lakeisha, and say, man, how in the world did she do it? But it wasn't nobody but the grace of God. So, yes, we have to continue to pray, and as we pray, give him praise, give him glory, give him honor for who he is, but definitely for sustaining you through it all and for allowing you to be able to help others, and then keep pressing. Just don't give up. And to some, they may say that's easier said than done, but you got to push yourself. You got to be determined. Like she said, that thinking, change your thinking, you change your life. If you are determined in your mind that I'm not going to give up, that I will keep pushing, trust me, you're going to have the energy and the strength to keep going.
So true. And as you were talking, I began to think about the word outlet came to me. Outlet, outlet. That's all I began to hear. And I was just thinking about how you have to have an outlet. You know, in the beginning, I began to think about, and I began to ask myself, what was my outlet in the beginning? But my outlet in the beginning was literally the church that I was going to at the time. Literally, it was going to church. See, here's the thing. Keyshawn was going to church. I wasn't going to church, but my son was going to church with his friends. So it was already being planted in him, first of all. Okay. So then when he passed away, the church that he was going to, here's how God set things up. Keyshawn was going to church with his friends. Okay. So when he passed away and they saw it, it was on social media. The pastor and his wife had met my best friend at a restaurant in Waldorf like 3 months ago before he passed away. So when they saw it on Facebook and they saw that she was my friend on Facebook, they contacted her. Y'all best friends? I know this child. He's coming to my church. He's hanging out with the pastor and his kids after church. They're dropping him off. You know what I'm saying? All of that, which led me to the same church through my grieving process. So my outlet began to go to church. And literally, when I tell you, I was church laid out on the floor, roll. I'm telling you, they let me roll, they let me cry, they let me yell, they let me scream, but I felt better when I left. The heaviness that I took into church every Sunday, I felt a little lighter when I left out. And it helped. That was my outlet for months. And then maybe like a couple of weeks after, my family would come to church with me. They would go up to the altar. The pastor would pray for our family. The pastor would begin to speak to me and my family and to say that this is what this is going to form with my family in the future. You know, you have to have some type of outlet. All of the pain is not going to come out, but release some of it, whether it's talking to somebody, crying, writing, therapy, counseling, something. A lot of medication is not the only answer. Medication is not the only answer. There's healing beyond medication, you know? So you have to have some type of outlet. And only you know what that outlet is. People can suggest it, but only you know what works for you. Only
Absolutely.
you, only you know what works for you. And I'll just let you speak on everything that I've said thus far, Tawana, as we wrap up.
Yes, having an outlet is hugely important. My outlet was traveling with the church, Lakeisha, because I was on the choir, and so the choir was always traveling to other states. Um, and so I would travel with the choir, and that was uplifting for me. Another outlet for me was shopping, though. I was always in Macy's. I was always in Macy's buying up suits and dresses and stuff like that. And that made me feel better then. But after a while that pain still came back. But God is amazing. But you definitely have an outlet. But I love the way He orchestrates things beforehand. Like you said, your best friend had uh lunch or went to the restaurant with the pastor and first lady of the church that your son was going to. I love the way he orchestrate things. He already have things in place. And because I never planned a funeral service for anyone that close to me before, I didn't even know what to do, Lakeisha, because when your loved one passed, it's such a difference when they die in the hospital, when they die at home, or when they die in the nursing home or rehabilitation place or whatever. Like you gotta have somebody come pick the body up and all this stuff. Like I really didn't know what to do. I was lost. And I didn't know we had to go to the medical examiner office to ID them. Even though I saw them at the hospital, they pronounced them dead at the hospital. I had to still ID them at the medical examiner's office. And just to see that all over again was devastating. But the way God orchestrated people to pitch in and to help in certain aspects of planning their service was just amazing. Like it was so much lifted off of me because people were just uh he orchestrated them. You take care of this, you do this, you do that, and they would come to me and say, Tawana, we have already taken this is done, this is done. uh the missionary's going to handle the repass, and it was almost like I didn't have to do anything but show up. And so God is amazing how He orchestrate things beforehand and things afterwards.
And it's so true, Tawana, because as I began to think, the same pastor and the first lady, as you said, took charge. You talking about I didn't have to try to figure out how to do the obituary. I believe it was them and maybe my best friend, or they probably I can't even tell you how they put it together. But that it was taken care of. To even, I remember, I think it was the church and over there in Temple Hills, that had reached out. And sometimes you got to know what will bring you comfort. Like I had people that were willing to do the whole service for free. but somebody else had to speak on my son's behalf. It was like something to it. I was like, nah, I want this person to do my son's obituary. They was, and I respect that. They don't want nobody, different people, anybody stepping up in their pulpit. I respect that. But at the end of the day, what's going to comfort me is for this person to do my son's eulogy. For me to, because that's a part of my memory process. That's a part of my healing. That's a part of me moving forward. So, like I said, I had people that wouldn't do the whole service because, mind you, it was on the news. It was on social media. It was everywhere, to the point where I was even embarrassed to leave Pennsylvania Avenue the apartments on Pennsylvania Avenue to go down the street to therapy because I thought somebody was going to recognize me on the news. It was just that bad. Walking quick to the car, jumping in the car, getting out in the elevator, trying to turn my face and putting on sun. It was just that bad. But I'm telling you, you are so right. The way that God will orchestrate it, I did not literally have to do much. They jumped in, they did everything. You talking about going? I remember them even going to the courthouse with me and my family, praying with us. And not even then. As we wrap up this live, his homegoing service. I'm telling you, my sons, it's one thing when your family member and your loved one pass away, and you, like you were saying, you didn't know what your kids, the atmosphere that they were doing in school. Even though, yes, my son may have been an at-risk teen and in a gang, as they say, and so many different things, and labeled as a troubled child in the community. But what I didn't know, and I started to find out even at the visual in Oxon Hill, my son was inspiring grown people his age. I'm like, my son? Why can I smile? Why can I be happy? Because even in the midst of everything that was happening, God said, Keisha, your son was shining. He was in, adults was coming to me telling me how my son blessed them. My son was in DC. What you doing in DC? How people know you in DC? But those things helped me to hold on. That when he passed, I was like, you know what? The world wanted to label him as an at-risk troubled child. And that I was this single mother that whatever they said. But however, God put a whole new definition on that thing. He put a whole new definition on it. And sometimes we have to be able to just find a sense of hope for ourselves. What keeps us grounded? What keeps us stable? And as Pastor K said, and I put it on the screen, God is the cure. And we'll end it with this. God is the cure. You keep trying to do this on your own. You keep trying to put the plan together on your own. You're going to fail every single time. You are going to fail. You're going to get it. You're going to drop. You're going to get it. You're going to drop. Here's the thing. I tell people, it's not an easy struggle with God, but it's more manageable with God. It's more, that's my experience. I ain't never turning back for no man, no, the physical man. No.
Absolutely.
Since I decided to do it this way, do I still get stressed? Yes, but not as stressed. Do I still get frustrated? Yes, but not as frustrated. Am I able to bounce back? And do I have that better management over my emotions and my anger? Yes, I do. Do I get depressed as much? No. Do I still have times when I lay in the bed and I cry and I don't want to get up? Yes. But I talk to myself, Keisha, we ain't going to do this today. Keisha, we ain't letting this depression give in today. And I get myself up. And here's the thing that I noticed this year coming into New Year's Eve. Keyshawn's birthday is January the 5th. And this year, when I tell you, if people were paying attention to me, if you were friends with me, things hit different this year. All because I literally grabbed on to God in a different form. Grieving was different this year. Even when my aunts and people were calling me, they're like, you okay? Like, literally, you okay? Because you ain't never sound this good on his birthday, but it was that sense of God is the cure. I have been trying to do it for so long on my own. I have been trying to give it to God, hold on halfway. Give it to God, take on other responsibility. But this year, I said, God, and my level of grief, the comfort grew. It was different. I shocked myself. So God is the cure in all circumstances, in all situations, whether it's a child, whether it's a parent, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a spouse, whether whoever it is. God is the cure. And until we get to the point where we take our hands off of trying to handle it and trust God enough to bring us through, you're not going to see a difference. And that takes us back to that mental aspect, that mental thinking. That that's the key. Do you want, back to what Towhanna said, back to my notes? Are you going to let this thing destroy you, or are you going to choose to defeat this thing? And that's how I'll end the live. Yeah, you grieving. Yes, you lost a loved one. Yes, it hurts. Yes, I know it was your child. I know it was your mother. It was your father. I know ain't nobody loved you like that. I know it hurts. I know. But at the end of the day, are you going to commit? Are you going to commit? Are you going to commit to not let that thing destroy you? Are you going to do it? Because if you choose to stay there, you can't complain. You can't complain. The addiction can't keep you there. Rape can't keep you there. Grief can't keep you there. Breakup can't keep you there. Depression can't keep you there. Nothing. What people said about you, the judgment, the shame, the guilt, the self sabotage, nothing can keep you there. It's a choice that you make that allows you to stay there. And that's how I will end this live. It has been awesome, Towhanna. Y'all know I go hard
Yes.
because so many times we try to sugarcoat it. So many times we try to gain people acceptance. And that's not what they need.
No.
When I was going through my grieving process, it was me sitting in church hearing the pastor say some things that made me want to say, I'm getting up out of here. But because I was challenged to my highest, I sat right there in church. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take it because it's me. I'm going to take it. I'm going to deal with it. And I roll with it. And I always promise myself, because I know that people that are challenged, that really want change, will adapt to change. You're going to find a way. You're going to think of a way. You're going to create a way. But the challenges, when they impact you in a way that they never impact you before, yeah, you'll change. Mhm. Yeah, you get tired of that bad relationship. Yeah, you get tired of giving into that toxic and dysfunctional situation. Yeah, you get tired of people disrespecting you. Yeah, you get tired of not having no boundaries and no standards for yourself and allowing people to talk to you any and every way. Yeah, you get tired of it. Eventually, you get tired of it. There is a way for whatever struggles that we are going through, whatever we're facing, not just grief. There is a way, but the responsibility lies in your hands and
Yeah.
only your hands. And when you begin to take control of it, things will change. Go ahead, Tawana.
Real quick, while you was talking, I thought of this song, God Has a Way That's Mighty Sweet. I can lay my burdens down at his feet. He knows the road and he knows the way. God has a way that is mighty sweet, and he does. There's no better way to get through your journey without him.
Absolutely. And that's I do this for self therapy. I do this for encouragement for people. I do this because God planted it in me. This is what I was called to do. I love to do it. I'm passionate about it. I'm dedicated to it. I'm never going to stop. This is what I do. It's brought me through my hardships, my dark moments. I never thought that I would see light again when I lost my son. You could never tell me that sun was going to shine through my blinds again. You could never tell me that I was going that I was going to transition from acting like I was okay to actually finding a way to be okay.
Mhm.
So it's just that serious. Like you gotta want it. So I thank God for this opportunity. Love Talk with Keisha is basically about helping people to push through whatever circumstance they're dealing with, to just adapt to healing, grab onto that healing. There is so much happiness on the other side of that situation. There is so much peace. I ain't never had so much inner peace. I ain't never not cared what nobody thought about me. I ain't never talked as much as I talk. I have never been so confident in me because I have taken the steps, I have adhered to the phases, and I have admitted to the stages that it took for me to get here. It didn't happen overnight. It took years to build this up. But because I was committed and determined, I'm still glowing. I'm still processing. I'm still maturing. I'm still blossoming. And I'll do it to the day that I die because I ain't turning back. I'm good where I'm at. But yes, Tawana, I thank you. I thank you for your transparency. Love Talk with Keisha is about truth, testimony, and transparency to reach the people to really step beyond those circumstances that they are facing. So many people don't have an outlet. So many people are stuck. So many people don't have anybody to confide in. So I always tell myself, if this is the only place that they can get it, I'm 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 helping somebody. I'm helping somebody. So I thank you again for being so willing to come on Love Talk with Keisha today, and share your story of losing your two kids. And I commend you for your push. I commend you for the strength that you have, and for trusting God also. And welcome him in a part of your process. So many people, we say it, but so many people have, it's a struggle for some people to just say, God, okay, I'm gonna let you come in. Okay, God. That's hard for some people because some people don't even know God. They don't even know how to ask for it. They don't even know how to step into it. So for those of us that do and are holding on to it, it's a great thing. So let's just be careful of how we're treating people. Be careful of what we're saying about people because we don't know those inner struggles. We don't know their inner challenges. People are putting on masks. They're hiding behind facades. As Tawana said, they are suffering in silence. So I try to tell myself, be slowful when I want to speak about somebody and they don't look right or sing right because I don't know. Pray for them. Pray for them. And yes, that's just what I'll say. So I thank everybody for again joining just another awesome Love Talk with Keisha. Managing grief today with Grief and Loss Coach Towhanna Boston. This has been very enlightening. It has been helping to me along my journey. Tune in for our intercessory prayer. Intercessory prayer is coming up. We have intercessory prayer every fourth Thursday, and it is coming up this Thursday. This is gonna be a special one. I got something special for you, but you gotta check it out on Facebook. It's gonna be posted tomorrow. So stand by. We're doing something special this Thursday, and that will be at 7 o'clock. And then our next show will be April 2nd. April 2nd, we're going to be talking about expressing yourself, ways that we can express ourselves pertaining to healing. So tune in, don't miss the show. We're going to wrap up in prayer. And to Tawana, again, I thank you for joining me on today. In the absence of my co-host and my purpose partner, we all have our own separate duties and commitments, and they are in a conference with their church, leadership conference with their church today. So I thank you for having this discussion with me on today. We're going to pray and we're going to end this live. Dear God, I come to you once again just to say thank you, God. I come to you just to say thank you for just this conversation on today. I pray that this conversation on grief will help someone just find a sense of direction, give them some encouragement, some an uplifting sense of renewness, of some light, some guidance, some understanding of how to start, where to start, who to talk to, who to reach out to, God. Allow them to understand that with you, all things are possible. And without you, the struggle will be rough. God, I thank you for Towhanna on today, who has been able to continue to push through her grieving process. I ask that you continue to pour into her as she dedicate herself to pour into other people and to help them through their grieving process. As she said, it is not an easy task because it triggers come along, triggers are attached. But I pray that you continue to give her strength, God. I pray that you continue to watch over her, watch over her kids, watch over her grandkids, watch over her household, keep them covered from point A to point B. God, I come again asking you to watch over me, watch over my kids, my family, my grandkids. Continue to watch over the household that I'm in right now, God. That I pray that you just continue to protect and provide for our families, keep us covered from the world, from society, from the labels that people try to put on us, the judgments, all of those things. God, I pray that you just continue to use us. So what in whatever form you may have us to be, that we just continue to walk in purpose, walk in our passion, walk in what we are called to do. I pray that you just continue to bring guests. I pray that you continue to bring conversations. I continue that you continue to bring realness. You continue to bring truth, transparency, and testimony to Love Talk with Keisha that will stand out to people, so that will stir up and cause change, that will stir up and want them to step beyond comfort, that will stir up and cause change to allow them to step towards beyond fear and all of the things that hold them back, that will cause them to just release strongholds and release the change and to step into breakthroughs and to reach the blessings and just cause so many different things, excel in their life. I pray for everybody on today, God. I just begin to just thank you for what you are doing in my life. For what you are about to allow me to walk into, God, I know that it is only you. I thank you because that's why I do what I do, because you have proven to me that if I put my trust on you and if I continue to keep you first, that you will supply every need. And God, you have proven that through the last 90 days of my life. I pray that you just continue to use me as a vessel to stand out and be bold and to show not just women, but single parents and people that have been in toxic and dysfunctional relationships, God, and people that have been broken by their mates, and people that have doubted themselves, and people that thought that they couldn't do it on their own, that you thought that you needed somebody else to reach that goal, and that you thought that you needed somebody else to make that dream come true, God. I pray that you may use me as an example to allow them to see that when you trust God, when you believe God and you just adapt to putting him first, put him before the man, put him before the wife, put him before the finances, put him before everything, he will allow everything to fall into place when you take your hands off of it and stop trying to put the puzzle together. That when we allow you to allow us to walk into it, it's something more. It's something we never dreamed. It's something that we never thought would be this good, all because your hands is on it, God. So on today, I thank you again for everything that you are doing in my life, and continue to use me, continue to strengthen me, even on my bad days, even on my worst days, even on my frustration days, even on my terrible days when I don't feel like doing it, God. I pray that you continue to just stir up that strength in me, stir up that drive, God. Continue to allow me to just push like never before. Continue to be an example for my sons and my grandkids, and for those in my family that are looking at me, God, and that are counting on me, God. I pray that you just continue to use me to help somebody else. God, I thank you for the strength that you've given me to continue to walk this path over 7 years, God. God, it hasn't been easy, but I've been determined, God, to stay and commit myself and become close to you. So, God, I thank you on today for recovery. I thank you on today for breakthrough. I thank you for change. I thank you for transformation. I thank you for self confidence. I thank you for valuing myself and loving myself. And God, I thank you for the release of strongholds over my life. God, only you can do it, God. Only you allowed me to do this, God. And God, I thank you for a support system, even in this transition of moving into my house. God, I thank you for the support that I never had. I thank you for the people that reached out to help when I thought that I had nobody. When I thought that the transition was going to be hard, God, you put the help right in front of me, God, and I thank you. God, I thank you, because only you did it. So God, on today, I pray that you just continue to just allow my path. That you just continue to just give me the strength to endure this journey. Wherever you're going to take me, whatever you have for me, whatever I'm about to walk into, God, I thank you before I even get there. And as I kneeled down several years ago and I prayed that, God, if you bring me through this hard moment of grief, after my grandfather, after my father, after my husband, and now my son, God, if you bring me through, I'll serve you for the rest of my life. And God, as I commit myself to that, I just ask that you allow me to stay grounded in you, that I won't turn back for anyone, that I won't give up. And I know the challenges are still going to come because they've been coming hard for the last 90 days. But God, I thank you that you just keep confirming, Keisha, I got you, baby girl. Just stay close. So, God, on today, I say thank you in a way like I've never said before because you've shown up in a way that you know. So, God, I say thank you. God, I don't know what they have to see. I don't know what they have to do. I don't know what they have to feel to know that you are real. But God, you've shown to me that you are real. I don't have to doubt you in my finances. I don't have to doubt you in my kids. I don't have to doubt you in my relationship. I don't have to doubt you in my physical health. I don't have to doubt you in my emotions, God. I don't have to doubt you on my job because you've shown up in the last 90 days in every single area that I've been going through this process. And God, I thank you for everything that you've shown me. I thank you for sitting me down in a room where I was able to just concentrate and take in everything that you had for me, God. Because I realized if I was placed somewhere else, I wouldn't be able to grab and grasp onto everything that you had. So, God, on today, I say thank you for just keeping me in a right mind, even when it seemed hard, even when I was frustrated, even when I was depressed, even when I was tired and I didn't want to push and I was multitasking so many things. God, I thank you that you still allowed me to stay on task and you kept me strong. God, this is my prayer on today. These requests and these blessings I ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Keisha.
This has been Love Talk with Keisha. I thank you. I thank everyone for joining. Um, Tune in next time. We come back strong every single time. I love you guys. Come on, we can talk backstage. Don't go nowhere. Um, I will see y'all next time. I love you, and God willing, we'll see each other again.
Bye.